Is everyone done talking about Red Dead Redemption 2 now? Yes? Cool, my turn. Now, I'm not going to say that I took a 2-month vacation away from YouTube specifically to play RDR2. But over the past few months, I have played a lot of R2D2 or what the hell ever. Not the multiplayer mode though. I don't know why, just not interested. Also, I'm pretty sure it would ruin all my arguments. So we're just gonna ignore its existence. Surprisingly, I'm not going to sit here for this entire video and pretend that Red Dead 2 is a perfect game and that every company out there should copy it. It's not, and they shouldn't. Unless they don't know what they're doing, in which case there's worse games to steal from, go for it. That said, I think it's a pretty damn good game. Namely, I feel like it nails a few aspects that I think MMOs could really benefit from. This is something I've been stressing for a long time in my videos. For being open world games, the majority of landmass in MMOs has almost no reason to exist. In most modern-day MMOs, the main purpose of having a large map seems to simply be to spread out your kill and fetch quests. Once you're done with those, you'll basically never see any of these locations again, as the majority of MMO endgame consist of instance dungeons, raids, and PvP maps. For most of your playtime, you're gonna sit in a city, waiting on a group queue, while browsing what I'm going to assume is family-friendly content on your second monitor. Aw, that's cute. So why do devs even build this large world? Seems like a waste of time and resources. Well, if a new MMO is coming out that doesn't have a large world, potential players will almost immediately write it off as lazy. And I've been one of those people. I'm not happy about it, but whatever. However, if it does have one, you won't get complaints, but generally no one seems to care. It's just kind of like, oh, your game has a large world? Good, you now passed the minimum certification for being an MMO. What's your endgame like? It seems like devs only continue to build these large worlds out of what feels like obligation rather than attempting to build a cohesive virtual world. RDR2 feels like a virtual world because it actually feels like it has a purpose. Or maybe that's just me, but this is my channel, so I don't give a f. It's also really frickin' pretty, which isn't all there is, but it helps. Traveling around can be fun and even dangerous because there's events everywhere, and most of them feel like they're truly random, even if technically they aren't. I know traveling around an MMO world is generally seen as a waste of time by a lot of people, but by allowing instant travel through group queues and then making that your main source of in-game content, your MMO is just an overglorified lobby game. You lose any sense of immersion. It's one of the reasons I used to love Black Desert. Actually having to travel, even if through autopathing, helps pull me into the world. Because I actually have to spend time looking at it. I would argue that traveling is where the main fun happens in Red Dead 2. NPCs are out on the roads that you can interact with in a variety of ways. There are animals everywhere for you to hunt, and animals everywhere hunting you. Running around the map and going off the beaten path can actually yield some fun results, even if there are some rather empty spots. In modern MMOs, exploration usually just yields a group of mobs that you really shouldn't bother with because you probably don't have a kill quest for them anyway, and the experience and items they drop aren't really worth your time, so why bother? It's sad to think about. All those environment artists' hard work being ignored like a middle child.
Who wants a high five? High five! High five! Well, I guess that's it.
I do think the idea of scaled content has helped with this in games like ESO, Guild Wars 2, and even World of Warcraft now. This allows people to travel anywhere at any time and get of-level rewards and experience. Players can go out and have a reason to see some of these areas. However, scaled content still has its own issues. For starters, you still have an endgame problem. Why travel and explore when what you get from the open world mostly doesn't matter because everything you get from an instance zone is going to be better? And secondly, if the game isn't initially designed around the concept of rewarding players for exploring and creating an immersive environment, then there's still very little incentive to go off the beaten path. When questing is your main source of reward, then why go off the beaten path at all? It's an issue I have with questing in general, but we're not discussing quest design yet. RDR2 has quests, but they aren't filler like most MMO killer fetch quests. In RDR2, they are designed to be tutorials that teach you a new aspect of the game, or they move the story forward in a meaningful way. And they manage to be entertaining at that. Now, there are some quests in Red Dead 2 that are pretty kill and fetch questy, but when there's not an overabundance of them, it's not really a problem. It makes each one you get a bit more meaningful, and isn't that what you want? Doing quest after quest makes a game feel more like a list of tasks you have to complete rather than playing a game. And don't get me wrong, lists can be rewarding and even relaxing, but it doesn't really feel like a game. Granted, the only reason MMOs seem to have so many pointless quests is to aid with progression. Without them, you run into the problem of how to level people up. Grinding? That's not ideal. If only there was a way where progression wasn't really all that necessary. Which brings me to... I've said it before and I'll say it again, levels are fucking stupid. At least in most modern MMOs, let me explain. In older MMOs and RPGs, levels had a purpose. Each and every one took time and effort to achieve and brought substantial rewards. But now, well, there's a reason people say the real game begins at endgame. Which begs to question why even bother having the other part of the game. Whenever I bring this up though, someone inevitably says, "Idiot, the leveling process is a tutorial meant to get you ready for hardcore dungeons and raids." Which is complete bullshit. Most of the things you see and do in raids, you will never encounter while leveling. Honestly, if you look at the mechanics used while leveling versus the mechanics used while raiding, it's basically an entirely different game. You learn how to do raids and hardcore dungeons by doing them, or through online guides that break everything down step by step so you don't have to bother learning. That's the true way to play MMOs. Progression in Red Dead Redemption 2 is very subtle. Yeah, we're still talking about Red Dead Redemption 2. You'll slowly increase your attributes such as health, endurance, and deadeye over time. Quests will unlock new iterations of skills as you go along, but nothing that makes it necessarily more powerful over previous iterations. New guns really aren't all that much better than the ones you start the game with. The same goes for horses. I mean, yeah, they're definitely better, but not like OMG so OP better. And again, we're talking single player here. I don't know about Red Dead Online, and I'd rather not because I'm pretty sure it just ruined it for me. The real progression in the game seems to come from upgrading your base, of which most of the upgrades seem to have the point of making exploration easier. I don't think there's much I can do content-wise in Red Dead after playing 100 hours that I couldn't have done at the beginning if I tried hard enough. For me, progression never felt like the goal of Red Dead Redemption 2, and neither did the story. It was all about living and playing in this world. And when the world design, quest design, and progression are all centered around this, it works really well. And that's something MMOs have forgotten. The genre that started off creating virtual worlds for thousands of players to live in has been replaced with a set path for players to follow and a list of chores, specifically designed to try and keep them playing and paying. And while this works for some and is seen as the only financially viable option for others, I'd like to think the positive reception and success of Red Dead Redemption 2 shows that people still want this in their games, and that this approach is financially viable for developers. You don't need list and endless progression. You just need to put out good, well thought out games. Hey everyone, I am not dead. I am back from vacation. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to hit subscribe. I've got a lot more coming. And thank you to all of my patrons who have continued to donate. You all are awesome.